The wealth transfer is not coming. It has already begun. But if you're not bleeding in silence right now, it's not for you. Before I even begin, if your spirit already feels this, drop a "I receive it" in the comments and like this video so it doesn't get buried. This is not a prophecy to make you excited. It's a divine audit, and God's been watching your private decisions, not your public prayers. You think the vaults of heaven will open just because you tithed once? You think angels are assigned based on how loud you sing on Sunday? No, beloved. This transfer is not about your performance. It's about your posture. The posture of the soul that keeps building while bleeding. Of the one who gave when it cost them their last ounce of strength. Of the one who sowed when they were the ones who needed rescue. Heaven calls them the mantle carriers. You might call them ordinary, but in the courts of heaven, they've already been marked. And while others are clapping for platform and visibility, God is moving the wealth toward the ones hidden in caves, the ones you never liked, the ones you thought were too quiet, too broken, too offbeat, the ones who walked away from everything just to stay obedient. This isn't a season of abundance. It's a transfer. A violent relocation of what was once in the hands of Pharaoh into the hands of Joseph. And you don't become Joseph by accident. You become Joseph in the prison of misunderstanding, in the years where no one texts back, when you feel like heaven is ignoring you, when your gift feels useless and your seed feels wasted. But you keep going. You keep building with blood in your mouth and fire in your eyes. And that is why the wealth is shifting. Not because you asked, but because you qualified, in silence. Let me be clear. God is not transferring money. He's transferring mantles. He's transferring responsibility. Kingdom wealth follows kingdom assignment. If you're not carrying the burden, you won't carry the bag. This is why you've been uncomfortable. This is why your life hasn't made sense for a decade. This is why you've lost people you were sure would walk with you forever. Because the mantle you're carrying was never meant to be popular. It was meant to be heavy. Heavy enough to crush your pride, your plans, your preferences, until all that's left is obedience. You see, some believers are asking for breakthrough, but God is asking for blood. The blood of your ambition. The blood of your delay. The blood of your secret idols. Not everyone will survive this transfer, because this transfer requires death. Death to self. Death to comfort, death to passive Christianity. And here's the part nobody tells you. God doesn't transfer wealth to comfort you. He transfers it to test you. The wealth is not the prize. The obedience is, because if He can trust you with nothing, He can trust you with nations. But if your faith only works when you're comfortable, you will be replaced. Yes, replaced. There are 7,000 more who didn't bow to Baal. You are not the only one. You are not too early. You are not too late. But you are not entitled to anything. You are either aligned, or you're watching someone else carry the mantle that was supposed to be yours. Pause. Let that wreck you, because this isn't motivation. It's mercy. He's still inviting you, but the vaults are already in motion. The transfer is happening while you're distracted with Netflix. The wealth is relocating while you're still asking for confirmation. God is looking for builders, and you're still looking for applause. Enough! Enough waiting for the right time. Enough pretending you don't know what He told you to do. Enough hiding behind humility when it's really fear. Enough asking for prophetic words when He already gave you a blueprint. You know what to do. You just haven't moved. And heaven is not obligated to wait for you. If this feels like a warning, it is. If it feels like love, it is. If it feels like a line in the sand, it is. Because this is your last delay before the door closes. This is not a countdown. This is a confrontation between who you were called to be and who you've allowed yourself to become. Because while you're still asking God, why haven't you sent it yet? He's asking you, why haven't you built what I already gave you? He gave you the seed, the burden, and the blueprint. Yet you're still standing on the stage waiting for applause instead of permission. Still waiting on the bag. Still waiting on the validation. You forgot. God doesn't bless pride. He blesses obedience. And if your obedience is only active when you're seen, then you're not ready for what's coming. Because this transfer won't come with applause. It'll come with assignments, heavy ones, hidden ones, holy ones, the kind that will break you before they bless you, the kind that will strip you before they send you, the kind that will call you deeper than your feelings ever wanted to go. And if you're still trying to get rich so you can rest, this isn't for you, because this isn't a reward. It's a recruitment. The wealth transfer is real, but it's not for the entitled. It's for the enlisted. He was supposed to receive it. Everything pointed to him. He prayed louder than anyone in the congregation, lifting hands that had never once built an altar in secret. He fasted every January as if hunger alone could substitute surrender. He gave whenever the preacher said, "So now," but only if the blessing sounded immediate. He wore the t-shirts, reposted the scriptures, cried during worship sets crafted to stir emotions but not obedience. To everyone watching, he looked like the next in line. But when heaven moved, God skipped him. And what's terrifying is this: he didn't even notice. Because sometimes when your performance is loud enough, you can drown out the silence of divine absence. That's the tragedy of spiritual transfers. They rarely announce themselves. They arrive wrapped in whispers, hidden inside instructions so inconvenient, you almost dismiss them as unimportant. A nudge at 2 a.m. to get up and delete that backup plan. A quiet sense that says, call them and release the grudge. An uneasy stillness that lingers when you delay the blueprint you already received. But if you ignore those promptings long enough, they stop knocking. Not because heaven goes quiet, but because heaven moved on. Because while you were still praying for confirmation, someone else had already started building. Someone unknown, someone underestimated, someone with fewer followers and zero applause, but someone who said yes before they saw. You see, God doesn't cling to delayed obedience. He's not bound by our comfort or our timelines. He's not sentimental. He's strategic. He assigns mantles based on surrender, not seniority. Ask Saul. He had the look, the title, the votes. He was everything the people wanted, but not what God required. And when he disobeyed, even once, God didn't hesitate. He went searching, not through palaces or pulpits, but through fields, through hidden places, through overlooked sons nobody thought to invite. And there, among sheep dung and silence, he found David, the boy with a harp, and a heart that bled obedience. That's the pattern. The transfer skips the obvious. It locates the yielded. While you're busy posting your reach, God is measuring your weeping while you tally followers. He's watching who you forgive while you brand your gift. He's testing the weight of your burden. You want wealth, then carry weight. You want access, then accept assignment. Because this was never about money. It's always been about mission. The bag is only a reflection. The mantle is the reality. And the mantle doesn't fall by popularity. It descends by proximity. It lands on backs that have bowed low enough, long enough, to feel forgotten. But some of you delayed, you paused. You weighed the cost and tried to negotiate your obedience. And in the spirit realm, that hesitation was not just a pause. It was a decision. You thought you were waiting on God, but heaven was waiting on your movement. And when you didn't move, the vault shifted. Because in the kingdom, you don't just miss blessings, you transfer them to the one behind you, the one hungrier, the one who doesn't care about being seen, only about being sent. And now you feel it, don't you? The tremble, the tightening, the ache that sits just behind your ambition, reminding you were supposed to be further by now. But comfort slowed you, caution caged you. God never abandoned you, but the assignment moved. It moved towards someone willing to carry what you still question. It moved towards someone who worships without needing the music. It moved towards someone who fasted in silence, sowed in lack, served in obscurity, because they understood that heaven keeps better records than Instagram. They wept, and then they walked, and now they carry what was meant for you. But this isn't punishment. It's permission. Heaven is not just exposing your delay, it's extending you another doorway. Because even though the mantle moved, you still have breath. You still have time. You still have a choice. Will you obey now, when no one is watching? Will you build, even if you never go viral? Will you finish what God whispered, even if it costs you your reputation? This transfer is real, and it's ruthless. It's wrapped in fire and clarity. It's not reserved for the religious. It's marked for the obedient. And if you're still breathing, you still have a chance to become the one it finds. They didn't start with money. They didn't start with favor. They didn't even start with clarity. But they did start with a yes. And that yes cost them everything. Family that turned cold. Friends that disappeared. Churches that didn't understand. Dreams that had to be buried before they could ever bloom. They weren't seen. They weren't celebrated. They weren't trending. But they were chosen. Heaven never gave them stages. It gave them assignments. Assignments that came wrapped in silence and soaked in sacrifice. Assignments that looked like exile, felt like rejection, smelled like failure. But the oil was accumulating, drop by drop, day by day, in places nobody else wanted to stay long enough to collect. These are the ones nobody invites, but God never ignores. The quiet builders, the hidden laborers, the nameless intercessor, the exiles carrying keys to kingdoms no one has ever seen. They carry wealth no bank can measure. They hold blueprints no human approved. And they've been entrusted with mantles forged in the fire of private obedience. They are what heaven calls the silent millionaires of the kingdom. They are not rich because of numbers. They are rich because of what they survived. They are wealthy in surrender. They are dripping in obedience. They've been entrusted with vaults not because they asked, but because they didn't quit when it made no sense to keep going. You might have passed by them. They don't dress for attention. They don't speak unless it's heaven speaking through them. They don't chase platforms. They carry altars. And when the transfer began, God didn't look to the loudest voice in the room. He looked for the hearts that had been whispering yes for years, even when it hurt, even when it broke them, even when it looked like they had made the wrong choice. Some of them lost homes, others lost marriages. Some buried dreams they never dared to speak aloud. And still, they obeyed. They stayed hidden when their flesh was screaming to be seen. They gave when their hands were empty. They forgave without closure. They served without credit. They wept and kept building anyway. And now, the wind is shifting. The heavens are remembering. The oil is being released, and the ones who thought they were forgotten are about to be enthroned without announcement. No fanfare, no press release, no highlight reel, just sudden visibility on the ones who refused to stop when no one else believed in them. Because God is not into celebrity, He's into legacy, and those who stewarded silence with reverence are about to carry weight no microphone could ever hold. You want to know why this matters? Because the ones who are rising now have already died. Not physically, but spiritually, emotionally, socially. They've been through the death of every idol, recognition, reputation, relevance, and they survived it, not by accident, but by fire. They died in deserts, in apartments no one knew they lived in jobs that felt beneath them, in ministries that drained them, in dreams that demanded everything and gave back nothing. But they kept bowing, kept building, kept burning, not because they saw the reward, but because they saw the one who promised it. They've learned to live off whispers, to be led by winds, to trust divine silence more than human applause. And when the kingdom transfer began, heaven didn't have to explain anything to them, because they'd been preparing for years, without knowing what, but knowing who. They are the fulfillment of Malachi 3:17. And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels. Jewels aren't made in daylight. They're forged in pressure and hidden in darkness until the time of unveiling. And that unveiling has begun. Don't miss it. Just because it's not happening on a stage, don't dismiss it. Just because it's not trending, don't disrespect it. just because it doesn't come in the form your pride prefers. Because the vaults of heaven are not concerned with trends. They respond to tears, to truth, to trust. And if you felt like the forgotten one, if you've wondered why it cost you everything just to stay faithful, if you've watched others rise while you buried yourself in obedience, then hear this. You were never buried, you were planted, and now your roots are about to break the surface. You are not behind, you are right on divine time, and the silence you endured is the exact currency God is now multiplying. Because the silent millionaires of the kingdom are not rising to flaunt what they have. They are rising to fund what heaven has spoken. And you are one of them. To walk into a transfer this divine, you must be willing to lose the parts of yourself that can't survive where God is taking you. Because heaven doesn't just pour out treasure, heaven filters vessels. And before he fills you with wealth, he will empty you of everything unworthy of it. The silent millionaires did not just endure lack. They endured a level of internal cleansing so intense that even their motives had to die before the blessing could live. You want the anointing, but can you handle the annihilation? Not the applause, but the pruning. This is the season of sacred separation, not from people, but from patterns, from pride, from hidden dependencies that you thought were harmless until God asked for them. He's asking now. He's asking for your plan B, the one you kept just in case this kingdom thing didn't work out. He's asking for that secret fear that's been managing your obedience, the one that keeps whispering, "What if I fail publicly? What if I give everything and it still breaks?" And he's asking for that identity you built out of trauma, the one that made you perform instead of trust, strive instead of surrender. Because the mantle comes with weight, but the vault comes with war. You think you're ready to be trusted with the wealth of heaven? Then prepare to be misunderstood on earth. Because what he's about to release through you will not look like success. It will look like sacrifice. It will require you to step when there is no sign, to obey when there is no confirmation, to give when there is no applause. The next instruction will not come with a crowd. It will come with a cross. And that's why few qualify. Because it's not about gifting. It's about grit. Heaven does not entrust its vault to those who want influence. It entrusts them to those who die to their need for it. And if you are still needing to be understood, if you still need to explain your obedience to people who don't carry your assignment, you're not ready for what's next. Because this transfer will isolate you. It will strip you down to your essence. It will expose how much of your identity was built on attention and how much was truly built on alignment. The wilderness was not a delay. It was a detox. He was detoxing you from addiction to human confirmation. Because where he's taking you, there won't be time to second guess. The instruction will come like lightning. And your only answer must be yes. Can you say yes when it doesn't make sense? Can you obey when you feel completely alone? Can you still believe the vault is opening for you while you're still in the hallway with nothing in your hands? That's the test. And it's not theoretical. He's testing you now, right now. Not in the service, not on the live stream, in the quiet, in the hallway, in the decision you've been delaying for months. That door you haven't closed, that relationship you haven't let go of, that call you haven't made, that business you haven't started because fear still owns your faith. He's watching, not to judge, but to measure. Because the release is precise, the timing is holy. The vault does not unlock to talent. It responds to trust. Can he trust you to build what no one claps for? To carry what may never be understood? To fund what the world will never celebrate? But heaven calls sacred. Because the wealth transfer is not about overflow. It's about obedience under pressure. And obedience in this season will cost you things your ego won't want to give up. It will cost you speed. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you validation, but it will buy you legacy. The kind of legacy that doesn't rot in a bank account. The kind of legacy that shifts bloodlines, that funds revival, that ends generational poverty. Not just financially, but spiritually. This is about more than money. This is about mantle, and mantle demands maturity. So, if you feel like everything in your life is being dismantled, take heart. He's not destroying you. He's refining the container. He's making space for what he's about to pour. Because if the container is cracked, the oil will spill, and what was meant to anoint nations will be wasted in your own dysfunction. So he cuts, he confronts, he consecrates, and then he entrusts. But only the surrendered will survive the scale of what he's about to release. The vault has begun to shift, not metaphorically, not someday. Now, there is a sound in the spirit, a groaning, a turning, a divine alignment of keys and timing. And those who've been waiting with oil in their lamps can feel it. The weight in the room has changed. The atmosphere is heavier, time feels thinner. What used to feel optional now feels eternal. You're not imagining that urgency. You're feeling the pressure of proximity. The vault is opening. But not everyone will withstand what's coming through it, because heaven never releases weight without first testing your structure. And when the blessing hits, it doesn't just multiply your fruit, it exposes your foundation. You prayed for release, but can you withstand responsibility? You asked for expansion, but can you hold the pressure of visibility, stewardship, and spiritual warfare all at once? Because when heaven releases treasure, hell releases attack. And if your soul is not anchored, you will confuse divine promotion with spiritual punishment. You will misread holy weight as worldly warfare. You will collapse under what you were meant to carry. God is not just looking for the willing. He's searching for the weighted, the ones who've been tempered by silence, strengthened by surrender, stabilized by seasons where obedience felt like abandonment. He knows who can handle it, and he's not asking you if you're ready. He's discerning if you're rooted, because this transfer is not just a deposit. It's a deployment. He's not handing out checks. He's activating kingdom architects. This is not about your lifestyle. It's about his legacy, the kind that funds freedom, the kind that flips systems, the kind that births businesses from blueprints downloaded in prayer closets. But here's what they don't tell you. With every divine deposit comes a demand, not from people, but from heaven itself. If you receive this wealth, you will be held accountable for how you wield it. This isn't seed money. This is kingdom capital. And God will not finance rebellion. That's why he tested you in obscurity. That's why he allowed delay. That's why he watched how you handled scarcity. Because how you steward lack reveals whether you can survive abundance. Anyone can worship when the harvest is visible, but only the chosen worship during drought. Only the mature obey when the promise seems dead. Only the trusted keep building after they've been betrayed. And those are the ones now being called forward, not with claps, but with weight. Some of you are being entrusted with ideas that don't make sense, strategies no one's done before, instructions that offend logic. And it's not because you're special, but because you've been sanctified by silence. You didn't just wait well, you let the waiting shape you. You didn't just survive the wilderness, you let the wilderness strip you. Now heaven has decided you can carry it, not because you're perfect, but because you're postured. The vault is open, but only the surrendered can access it. The desperate, the ready, the broken ones who never stopped believing, the wounded ones who kept worshiping, the forgotten ones who stayed faithful. He's not choosing the famous. He's choosing the fruitful. He's not measuring how loud you shout. He's measuring how deep you die. Because when this vault pours out, you won't have time to catch up. You'll either be positioned or passed over. You'll either be anchored or overwhelmed. This is the hour when the kingdom is no longer waiting. Heaven is moving. The angelic instructions have been sent. The vaults are pouring, and God is watching for movement. No more delays, no more excuses, no more rehearsing old obedience hoping for new rewards. This is the season of instant response, the kind of response birthed from years of being refined, the kind of yes that doesn't need a guarantee, the kind of action that proves you were always in alignment, even when the doors were still shut. So listen, This next door won't open by force. It opens by recognition. The vault responds to presence, to proximity, to those who have walked so close to God. They don't need to be told what to do. They already know. You feel it now. Now, don't you? The trembling inside, the weight of what's here, the whisper you can't unhear, the blueprint burning on the inside of you. It's not your imagination. It's your moment. You were born for this vault, and the vault has waited for you. This is the moment, not a metaphor, not a warm feeling, a spiritual line in the sand, drawn by God's own hand. Everything in your life has been leading here. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every betrayal you couldn't explain, every wilderness that made you question if you heard him correctly. You did. The silence wasn't absence, it was alignment. God wasn't punishing you. He was protecting the vault. Because if he had released it too early, you would have misused the oil trying to prove your worth. You would have poured it out into relationships that weren't consecrated. You would have sold the strategy to people who never carried the burden. You would have built for applause instead of assignment. But now the fire has forged you. Now the wilderness has readied you. Now the silence has matured you. Now the obedience has weighed you. And heaven is whispering, it's time, but not just for breakthrough, not just for provision, not just for platforms. It's time to step into what you were actually born for. You weren't born to survive. You were born to build, to fund, to disrupt the systems of mammon with the economy of the kingdom, to carry vaults that birth movements, to anoint what others only admire. But before the vault crowns you, you must choose. Because he will not anoint the divided. He will not bless a half-built altar. He will not entrust the vault to a soul still unsure if comfort is worth more than calling. You must decide, here and now. Do you want to be approved by men or activated by heaven? Do you want their attention or his authority? Because the cost of carrying this vault is everything. It will cost you your need to explain yourself. It will cost you your permission to shrink. It will cost you your tendency to delay what you already know. But in return, you receive what can't be bought, favor that can't be fabricated, clarity that can't be taught, and authority that doesn't ask permission. You will walk into rooms you didn't apply for. You will speak words that pierce systems open. You will sow and see nations shift, because it won't be you doing it. It will be the vault speaking through you. And they'll say, "Who is this?" Not realizing this is the one heaven has been hiding. This is the one who died 1,000 quiet deaths just to stay aligned. This is the one who didn't quit when quitting looked like the only sane option. The vault is not just for provision. It's for proving the prophecy true, proving that the low places will be exalted, proving that the rejected ones are the remnant ones, proving that God still chooses the unlikely, still honors the unseen, still anoints the overlooked. And if you're still wondering if it's really you, let me speak clearly. Yes, it's you. You're the one. You're the reason the warfare increased. You're the reason the silence lingered. You're the reason the vault stayed locked until you were ready. Heaven was never late. It was waiting for your yes, for your death to pride, for your surrender in secret. And now the scroll has been unsealed. The time has been fulfilled. The vault has been unlocked. But one final thing remains. You must carry it, not admire it, not post about it, not wait until it feels easier. Carry it. And if you don't, someone else will. Because heaven's agenda will not be delayed for comfort. It will move, with or without you, but it prefers to move through you. So this is your summons. This is your coronation. This is your final confirmation. The vault is not coming. It has come. It is waiting for a soul fully yielded, fully dead to self, fully possessed by the fire of obedience. Heaven is watching. The spirit is hovering. The blueprint is complete. The funds are in place. The vault is ready to crown the one who won't collapse under the weight of glory. So, rise, not for show, but for stewardship. Speak, not to impress, but to interrupt. Move, not because you're confident, but because you're called, and carry the vault, because what you do in this hour will echo in eternity. You are not small. You are not late. You were just being hidden until the vault opened. You are crowned. You are chosen. You are trusted. Now go and build what only obedience can fund.